Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds,
And Luke Simons.
like.
Diamonds, of
Oh,
course.
there we go. There we go. Little delay there. Luke is in his new place in Bokeelia. Yes, Luke Simons will be living in Bokeelia, Florida. Not much going on in Bokeelia last time I was there, except for basically fishing.
Lots of fishing, though.
Ton of 'em.
So, yeah, I'll be doing a lot of that and a lot of reports coming out soon. I got the boat right here behind the house, and so we'll be getting a ton of fishing in while I'm down here.
And for those of you listening on the podcast, you can't see this, but he's also, speaking of behind him, he's got like, I don't know, you got priceless china behind you or something? What's going on back there?
Yeah, it's some rich mahogany, case with some, who knows, some china, who knows?
Yeah, so Luke was living in we have a condo in Placida right next to Gasparilla Marina, if you guys are familiar with Boca Grande, and he's been living there for a while. Now Bokeelia, and kind of living the dream. It's pretty cool.
Recently back from Hawaii. Yeah, so I've been traveling all over and doing a ton of fishing. So I have a ton of content, so I'm going to be spending a lot of time editing all that, and so yeah, if you're watching this now, some really cool content coming soon, and more to come.
Yep.
All coming along.
And so speaking of that, the last 2 weekends, which is why I'm missing our little Salt Strong event in Mosquito Lagoon. Last 2 weekends, I've been down in Boca Grande, actually more than just the weekends. It kind of carried over for quite a few more days, filming content for an upcoming course that we're doing. And the course is all about how not to get skunked, AKA the skunk prevention course. And, we have a lot of mastery courses. I think we've got like 16 of them now, I believe. And we've got a couple more in the hopper that we just filmed. And the number one question, though, we seem to get from people is they love like Redfish Mastery was our top seller by far, and the Inshore Slammer, like those are our two best in terms of best sellers and people having big transformations. But I think most weekend warriors and even newbies, but weekend warriors seems to be our largest demographic of anglers. They just want to go get tight lines, right? Everyone, including me, I got 3 young kids. I can't go live like a vagabond like you, Luke. When I get a hall pass, I want to make sure I'm catching fish. If I caught a world record fish or an IGFA record, awesome. That would be like gravy. But I just want to make sure I'm not getting skunked. I think most of us would rather just not get skunked than catch the inshore slam, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you just want to go out and have fun.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you got it. And especially when you're fishing with other people, right? I mean, one, you don't want to look bad, but two, you might want to show them a good time. Like, we took our daughter out fishing. I was kind of nervous because I haven't taken her fishing in a while. Like, this is the first time probably, maybe this year, besides bass fishing, that we've gone out on saltwater and inshore fishing. I was like, man, I want her to have a good time because there's so many distractions and devices with kids. And I wanted to make sure that we got tight lines, and we did. We'll talk all about that. My daughter caught, I don't know, was it 12 or she said 15, but it was at least 12 or so fish and like 5 or 6 different species. It was awesome, all in just one afternoon.
And she was letting us have it too. She was she was really letting us have it. She's asking questions like, "Have you guys ever caught 15 fish in an hour and a half?" Like really, that was awesome. It was really special.
7-year-old. Yeah, she's a trip. But anyhow, that's why we did this course, how to avoid getting skunked. And it's just because it's what most people want. And so we're talking everything from, our traditional inshore slams, which is redfish and snook and trout and flounder and black drum and tarpon. But we now threw in some of the other species that we haven't covered, sheep's head and Spanish mackerel and mangrove snapper, which, my daughter caught a bunch of. And those are awesome, and they're awesome eating, and everyone loves, and they fight great. I mean, everyone loves catching mangrove snapper. And so we're throwing all of it in, just like tons of fish, like big quantities of still quality fish. And we're not talking about junk fish, even though, that's still fun too. Like my daughter loved catching ladyfish. I think most of us, once again, just want to get tight lines. That's the entire mantra of the course and really of this whole podcast. We'll talk about some tips and then also talk about this, what do we call it? The skunk factor analysis tool. I think that's what we're finally calling it here. You guys will see it. We'll put a link to it, but it's completely free. It's a really cool tool where you literally, it asks you, I think, 6 or 7 questions and it spits out your number one skunk factor, like the number one thing holding you back from catching as many fish as you want. And that's after surveying like 60,000 different inshore fishermen, asking them what their number one challenge was when it comes to catching inshore fish consistently. And it is awesome. It is so cool because you get your own little personalized videos. So everyone's getting a little bit different answer. I mean, it's so cool. And it took us forever to build it, but it's finally ready, completely free, at least for right now. And I encourage you, after you listen to this podcast, to definitely click that link and go through it. And then you have a chance to actually get the entire course, the entire How to Avoid Getting Skunked course, completely free if you wish, meaning we put a really big, bad, bold money-back guarantee for an entire year. And it'll be at a massive discount right off the bat. So that is just kind of the background on why we're doing this and what we've been up to the past couple of at least weeks. It's been more like a month or so, but the last couple of weeks, that's all we've been focused on, is building this out, putting the best content out there possible, and just simplifying, 15 years of Luke's knowledge. And actually Tony Acevedo, our kayak pro Tony, is also involved in this course and gives all his tips on just how to go out there and catch a lot of fish on a kayak. And oh, by the way, we got a really special guest, Captain Peter Deeks. We had to pay this guy an arm and a leg, but he literally gave us like his secrets on really tough days, just because anyone could go catch fish when everything's right, when everything's lined up, like our strike score. If you get a 9.5, it's not to say it's easy, but it's a whole lot easier. It's tough to go out there and get tight lines on those days where it's a grind, and that's what Peter revealed. I mean, Peter a long time. He used to fish against him in tournaments, and he revealed stuff that I didn't think he would reveal, and I'm pumped for you guys to get that.
Yeah, I was surprised he showed the spots that he did, because I know that he relies on those to take his paying customers, not only to just save on a slow day to catch some fish, but he gets some legit fish out of there. Snook, reds, trout, and giants, and tarpon. So yeah, this is the course that is probably the most needed, I would say, to the majority of weekend warriors, and really even some advanced anglers too, because again, like we were saying earlier, nobody wants to come home empty-handed. You're putting a lot of money and time into your hobby of fishing, and it's just embarrassing to come back and have to admit to the spouse or to your work associates that, oh yeah, I went out, but I didn't catch anything, to make up excuses like I remember doing, that the barometric pressure was off or something. And but deep down, I knew that I messed up. And this just makes sure that you put the odds in your favor. And it's surprising how effective that is. It's not just one thing, as you'll see, and we'll talk about some of the factors. It's not just one. If it was just one fix, then everybody be catching fish every single trip.
Right.
And that's clearly not the case. So it's a core, it's a handful of different factors that really have to be thought about. And once you do it properly, the skunk days are pretty much wiped out.
So if you guys are watching this on YouTube, you notice that Luke's lips are moving a couple seconds slower than his voice. So it's kind of like those old kung fu movies, even like, remember Police Academy? What's his name? Would do that and then talk.
Yeah, what was his name? I can't remember. Yeah, it was a good movie.
Tall, skinny black guy. He was hilarious.
Yeah, I was thinking it's not Hightower is the good movies.
Yep. All right. So let's get into it. What's you said it perfectly. There's not just one thing, but there still is like kind of one big idea that's the main focus of the course. And that's obviously putting yourself in the right spot at the right time. We had a podcast on this before. We talk about the 90-10 rule, that 90% of the feeding fish in inshore fishing, or really anywhere in the ocean, but inshore fishing specifically, 90% of the feeding fish are in 10% of the areas. Meaning, if you can look at one spot, big or small, and you can usually narrow it down to just 10% of that entire area, that's where the feeding zone is going to be. So that's kind of the big idea, right, Luke? Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's when trying to tackle any challenge, the smart thing to do is, okay, like, what's the one thing I can do that if I do it properly, everything else is easier. And for fishing, right, for catching fish, it's putting yourself in the feeding zone. Because when you're in the good feeding zone, you can have a terrible lure. You can have the like a little, a little kid's little mini reel, one of those little things. And if you're there, you can just catch fish, right? Those fish are more likely to hit something that they see. Doesn't have to be perfect. And so that's like the core nexus of this entire course is focused on using, both some like science of water, plus the fish's general biology. We talk about the migrational patterns of the most popular species, both the ambush predators and the roamers. And it's just about putting it all together. There's obviously a lot of factors, and we can't go to too much detail on this thing, but it's just putting it all together, thinking about the fish migration, the general areas where they're going to be, to isolate like the macro level 10% zones, like the 10% regions. And then once you identify that, then it's about getting on the online maps and thinking about the current flow, like the hydrodynamics of the area, as well as like the bottom structure that you can generally see from online maps, and just picking out, within that smaller level, the then next 10% area too, where you can really weed down and you can get surprisingly accurate with just using free online maps. And then the next level, right, is, so that's great. You can find the good spots from the map, but the next problem is, okay, like once you're there, how do you know if it's going to be good, right? It's impossible to find a good spot every time using the maps. I wish it was true, but it's not. So we also go in the next level of, the on the water assessment, like looking what to look for. So this day in particular that we took Shauna out, I had fished this area before, and so I had a good feeling that there was going to be fish around. But as we were pulling up, I was looking for birds. I was looking for bait, any kind of bait activity. There's a bunch of mullet jumping, and the current was wrapping around this little point. Even though the tides were really weak, there was some wind-blown current going through this little zone. And so just immediately I knew that we'd catch something. There was bait there. There was a lot of structure, and there was current. And sure enough, we had a really active day, even though the tide was basically like flatlined that whole afternoon.
Yep. And that was just shrimp, right? And what would it have, a little split shot on there? I mean, it was just literally that simple.
Yeah. I mean, just to maximize, as far as, the idea for this whole thing is to put the odds in our favor that we're going to catch something, especially when you're taking kids out. I mean, that's that much more important. Young kids, especially, the attention span, as we all know, is just not the longest. And so if there's going to be even a 15-minute gap on action, like game over, go home, whatever, pulling out the iPod or whatever, iPad. So as far as maximizing the action, it's really like shrimp is hard to beat. Like everything eats a shrimp, right? You want to be able to throw something out there that you can catch something that's big or small, and just knowing that shrimp is just one of the lowest items on the food chain, and everything eats them. It's a really safe bet. And then as far as, okay, how do we fish it, right? Is it we using a bobber and floating it up top, or are we going to put it, free line it in the middle, or are we going to put a weight and put it on the bottom? And in my opinion, as long as it's not too, as long as there's not too much structure on the bottom, or as long as you're not getting hung up, I should say, on the bottom's the answer, because like most of the feeding happens on the bottom. Because the ambush predators are usually holding there to ambush prey, and so they're just most often caught on the bottom, like redfish, sea trout, snook, flounder, especially. Obviously, they're designed to be literally on the bottom. But even the roamers too, the jacks, the tarpon, the cobia, I mean, those do cruise the bottom as well. Plus, they do go up and down, but they will go down to the bottom. So what we did is just got some shrimp. We got a little small hook, because there only small shrimp were there. So the hook to match the shrimp. Big fish can still be caught on the small hook, and so we just put a little split shot on there, and that was just enough weight to get it on the bottom, but it was light enough to let the current move it. And so we literally, and Sean was doing the casting too, so it was really, really cool to watch her have fun doing that. So yeah, we just positioned in a way that allowed her to throw we just kind of told her the general area to cast. She cast there, and then the current just kind of swept the bait down. And then before literally every single drift, she would have something on, or at least a bite. before it got back behind the boat. So it was just really cool. She had a ton of fun, and caught a variety of different species too.
I thought what was really cool, we did a kind of an experiment in that one spot, and this is, part of the course as well. Just you kind of mentioned earlier, trying to predict, you got the spot, predicting what's going to work best. So we had Shauna out there making her little, really short cast compared to how you and I would cast, pretty short, and still catching a ton of fish. We had another one, you had another like literally identical setup, same size shrimp, same size hook, but with the bobber right next to it. And Shauna was out fishing the bobber like 4-1. I mean, it was kind of neat to see that, because I think so many people do go out there and just assume you have to have a bobber, and it's nice for the kids. But I mean, here we are, a little 7-year-old who doesn't really fish all that often, and she was killing it, just throwing it out there, circle hook. And we told her, don't set the hook, just keep reeling down. And she did it over and over and over again. That was cool to see that. And then also in that same area, you and I went out without Shauna and caught redfish. I guess, we caught a snook too. A couple snook on artificial lures. So it wasn't just having to have shrimp. It all goes back to having that great spot where let's talk about what a great spot looks like. I mean, current obviously is important. We didn't have much that day, but we had a lot of wind, so it kind of made its own little current.
Yeah, I mean, again, to maximize the odds, that current is a good thing, right? Current is generally what will trigger a feed. I mean, in general, the worst time to fish, like I saw people, hey, like, what's the best time to fish? What's the best time to fish? There's not a perfect answer, but there is a perfect answer to when the worst time to fish is, and at least in my opinion is, and that's at slack period, right? At the slack in between the incoming and outgoing, just like everything stops, the current stops. In general, the feeding stops as well. And so knowing that, right, okay, like, the worst time to fish is when it's totally slack current. And then typically the opposite should be true as well. And in many cases it is, at least for most spots, as long as the current's not going too fast to actually fish properly. But for these flats and bays and in like open water areas, in most cases, the stronger the current, the better it's going to be. And so as far as like picking a good spot, right, like a lot of it's timing too. So you need to choose your spots based on the time, and especially when you know how the tidal movements occur. It's really important to not be wasting time in the slack periods, because you can be in a really good spot where there's a lot of fish, but you're just there at the wrong time and you're not going to have any luck. Whereas if you just planned a little bit better, you got there 30 minutes before or 30 minutes later, and you'd be catching a ton of fish. So really important to keep that all in mind. So as far as what makes a good spot, obviously there's a lot of factors that we dive to in the course, but like the high level is structure. We need some sort of structure, right? Like ambush predators, snook, redfish, sea trout, flounder, snapper, sheephead. Those are almost always feeding around some sort of structure. In most cases, they're ambushing some sort of prey that they would not be able to get if they were just on flat sand, or at least they wouldn't bother. They wouldn't waste their energy trying to track them down on flat sand. So we need structure, seagrass, oysters, docks, mangrove roots, right? Even just points of an island, really even just a depth change, like anything other than just flat sand, that's going to be a potential ambush spot for an ambush predator. And so if you have current, right, if you have multiple forms of structure, you're going to increase your odds of success. And if you have current that's kind of going through all that structure, it's going to be having a lot of different, it's going to be moving a lot of the small bait fish around and disorienting them and just making them easier to get for these ambush predators. So I generally look for, the total high level macros. Yeah, just find some structure, find some an area with bait fish and structure. And then that area that has current too is like the triple crown, if you will. So that's like the general thing to look for. And obviously, depending on the season, you would look in certain areas to have the best results, and that's where it gets more complex. But yeah, so that spot in general, and both when we did it with live bait with Shauna and when we did it the day before with artificial, it was literally just putting that into play. The artificial day, we were further up in the bay, And so there wasn't quite as much structure, but there was a lot of bait up there. There wasn't quite as much current, but there was a lot of bait up there, and there was some structure, and the water was higher. And so, we just kind of followed the fish up. And then with Shauna, the water was a little bit lower, so those fish have kind of like pulled off of that area, and we're in that trough. So yeah, there's a lot of factors, but as long as you do the core basics right, you should be able to have some good success.
Cool. Yeah. And speaking of seasons, ironically, why I was driving back home after filming a lot of this stuff with you, I got a text from one of my buddies who's a pretty good fisherman. But definitely, I think the term might be weekend warrior, but more often than not, it's probably like once a month, maybe once or twice a quarter. If they're lucky, they get to fish, got a lot of stuff going on in their life. And he sent me a text like, man, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I'm not catching any fish. The last 2 times I've been out, I have been skunked. It's frustrating. He's got a wife and kids, and he's like, I have no idea what's going on. And so I was texting back and forth, and I was like, well, tell me what you're doing. Where are you going? He's like, well, the first thing he says, I'm literally fishing the same spots I was killing it back in November and December. I'm like, all right. Do you ever think that maybe those were like good winter spots and not, because dude, this past weekend, it got like 96 degrees. Those aren't exactly the same spots that, and I'm going to hammer home ourselves. Like I'm going to, kind of make us look a little bad here, because you and I did this forever, right? We went back to the same old spots over and over and over again, all 4 seasons. Didn't even think that, oh man, maybe the fish are moving, based on the temperature and based on the spot. And so I obviously nicely told him, I was like, well, man, like, let's talk about, and I'm going to obviously make sure he goes to the skunk factor survey and gets in the course. But so many weekend warriors, including us for many, many years, make that mistake of just, hey, you have a great day in December and you assume it's going to work for you at the end of May or June. And that's not, occasionally that's the case. There are some spots that do kind of produce all year long, but they're very few and far between. Most of the time, you're going to have different spots based on different seasons.
Yeah, no telling how many just days of fishing we totally wasted because of that issue. We were totally, I can't remember the term. It's obviously it's one of the skunk factors, but we were totally guilty of doing that. And I remember, because we totally struggled for a long time. Like I thought we were good bass anglers grew up on a lake in Central Florida. So I had bass fishing down and really thought that transitioning to inshore saltwater would be pretty easy, and was totally just disappointed and frustrated. We finally were able to get like decent at catching trout, but like redfish and snook were like, there was just like a unicorn for us. Like we knew they were there somewhere, but we could never find them. And I remember Dennis Ost, whose place I'm actually staying at now, he was nice enough to take us out one day. And he showed us around to we caught fish in every single spot. It was like our first time ever catching a slam. And I remember how pumped we were. He took us to a lot of spots that were actually close to where we usually stay. And so I remember how pumped we were. And finally we have the spots. Like we were high-fiving each other. We're okay. Like, thank you, Dennis. Like now we're going to go back to the spots over and over again and catch fish every trip. And so we go back to the spots over and over and over again. And yes, we did have some good days, but most of them were bad. Like most of them, we totally got skunked in those spots that we had previously got fish, but we still go because we, in our mind, the fish were there because we caught them there once or twice or even 3 times. And we never once factored in the season, like the migrational movements of the fish, even the approach. Like we were approaching it wrong. We were making way too much noise and not using the current and the wind to our advantage. Because all that stuff, it's either going to be your best friend or your worst enemy, right? And so if you don't plan properly, the odds are that it's not going to be helping you; it's going to be hurting you. And even like lures, right? We just kept switching lures, and we never really had the right thing. So it's just like a lot of little small things. It's not just the spot. The spot is important, but it's more than that. It's the approach. It's what you what you actually deliver to the fish, and then how you do it. It's just getting all those different hurdles completed properly to have a consistent success.
Yeah, and to me, it's all about understanding the biology of these fish, why they're moving, why why do they want to be at certain depths at certain times of year and certain temperatures, and why are certain bait fish in certain areas certain times of the year? And you guys have done a great job, meaning you and Peter Deeks and Tony, on this course of breaking it down by season. I think at first you guys were, because I'm involved in it, just kind of the overall plan, and I was like, man, I really think we should do this by season. It's a lot of work to, instead of just doing one course in general, but now it's broken down by all 4 seasons. It is awesome, because I think that's so critical, where you almost have like a cheat sheet or a blueprint to say, all right, these are the types of areas, types of spots I should be recreating in my area. And regardless if you're in Texas or Florida or North Carolina, Virginia, wherever it might be, to go out there and just maximize my time at catching a lot of fish. Go for it.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, because there is a formula there. There is a formula that you can use to put yourself on fish that's shockingly accurate, but it doesn't span the whole year, right? The different variables become more and less important throughout the different seasons. And so that was the importance of breaking out by season, is that, now we can deliver in this course, we're able to deliver the exact formula. Like, hey, here's, you're in springtime, right? Here's your game plan. Here's exactly what you should be focused on. And here's what you shouldn't be focused on, right? And then, then summer, then winter, and then fall, and really cover everything one at a time. So like, here's the formula. Just worry about this. Don't worry about any other stuff. And don't worry about those spots that worked good the other season, right? This is a new time. And it's very surprising how accurate it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of this stuff, it's not like, hey, on April the 14th, the fish are going to be in this spot, but it is a formula. I mean, it's pretty accurate. And a great example, we do go to that condo in Placida quite a bit, and we were fishing there. We're like, let's just go check, the beach real quick. And remember we did, and there were some triple tail out there, but that was really it. And had someone done that and not known to look at the buoys for triple tail, they would have said, oh man, the beach is here, they stink, there's nothing there. Yet just a couple weeks later, we go out there on the beaches and there's literally mackerel jumping in the boat, right? And that all shifted.
Not literally in the boat, but all around the boat.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, almost literally in the boat. It was nuts. I'd never seen it like that. I mean, I was catching them off the paddle board with kids on the board. It was nuts. And so, I mean, but then again, a formula, right? I mean, we know now, based on studying this stuff, and I've learned so much from you and a lot of the guides that we've had on board, that you can kind of predict this within a week or two. It's not going to be on the day, but usually within a couple of weeks, you can kind of predict when those fish are going to be in certain areas. And when it happens and everything lines up, man, there is nothing better.
Yep. And again, that was the stuff I thought was, it required like a sixth sense to handle, right? Like, oh man, like, because for years we struggled, and I thought that there must be something that is just like in somebody's DNA. Like, you have to have like multiple generations of family members that have like gone through it all and seen it all to be able to like figure it out, to be able to to get consistent. And the reality is it's not nearly as as long as the fluff is just taken out of the equation, like having to have all the certain lures and like the nicest gear. It's as long as you can dial in the wear factor and the wind, that everything else is much easier. The how to catch them it becomes much easier, because again we tackled that number one thing that makes everything else easier.
Yep. So when was the last time you got skunked? Put you on the spot.
I mean, I have on my boat. If I take the boat out for more than like an hour, like I can't remember. I mean, where I don't catch anything, like even like a lady. Sometimes I'll bail out with bail myself out, just go to a spot where like an open grass flat with current that I know there's at least going to be like some small trout and ladyfish. But as far as getting totally skunked in my boat for more than just like an hour trip, like I can't. It's been years. On the paddleboard's tougher, so I got skunked I think twice last year, but both of which were short trips, and I slept in, so it wasn't like getting up early in the morning. Like the twilight period is almost always going to be the best bite. So especially in the summer months, and both of my skunks happened in the summer. once that sun comes up and everything's just getting real hot, those fish just become more and more lethargic. So yes, they do happen. I mean, it's impossible not to ever like to totally catch stuff every single trip, no matter what. But when these mechanics are utilized and done, especially if you have time to try out multiple spots, I generally always pick out like at least I'd say 5 spots. And if I'm able to go to all 5 of those spots, and obviously look at the tides, at the weather, I obviously know the season and the wind and wind speed and wind direction. And so if I'm able to fish all 5 of those spots, and when I go out, if I'm able to do that, I will almost say I'll say 90% certainty that I will at least catch something. And then the trips where I did get skunked, none of them involved me being able to hit up all the spots. So yes, it will happen, but it shouldn't happen very much if you just have a good game plan. And it's not going to happen overnight too. Like it just takes practice. So every trip, just so to explain what really helped me be able to consistently catch fish. I mean, more so than I ever thought. Like years ago, I wouldn't think it was even possible. Even going to like spots I'd never been to before, like went down to Miami, had a short trip and was able to catch some good fish, just fishing from the paddleboard in the middle of the day. But what really helped me, and it took a while though, but I would do a pre-trip plan, like a detailed pre-trip plan every single trip, even if I'm fishing in an area that I go to all the time. Yeah, I'll check the weather, check the wind speed, the wind direction. Obviously the tide's really important. And then I would pick out the spots, right? Then I'll go to those spots, fish them. And then at the end of the trip, I would think about what went right and what went wrong, right? Like what of my decisions worked out great, and then which ones were total busts. And then so then my next trip would factor those into account. So that's what really, really helped me. And the other thing too, that a lot of people don't utilize is just having a network of some sort that, human intelligence, right? So my biggest boost in catching not just quantity of fish, but quality, especially when I was doing the tournaments, is when I started those tournaments, and me and my buddy, there was like 40 boats in these tournaments. Probably about 5 of them were full-time guides or more. And so all of us weekend warriors, like we just wanted to beat those full-time guides. So we befriended a lot of them, and we realized that, we were better off if we would like help each other out. So we would, like, by the end of it, there was like 4 or 5 boats, and we all were friends, and we would share, what happened on the tournament days. We would tell what happened and tell where we were. But even on before the tournaments, on the pre-tournament scouting trips, not everybody could go, right? We had full-time jobs. And so whoever went would share what happened. And we all had an agreement. So like everybody knew everybody's first spot. So the first spot of the day we reserved for whoever had claim to it. But and so we would all fish the same spots. So everybody had their first spot locked in, and then afterwards it's whoever got there first type thing. But what happened is the fact that we were sharing that information, and we had real-time good intel from anglers who are legitimately helpful, who are like actually helpful and not hiding all the best stuff, is we were all catching good fish. And pretty much every single tournament, there was like 8 or 9 tournaments a year. And I believe it was every single one, at least one of us was on the leaderboard, like in the money. If in many cases it was multiple of us. So the networking aspect is something that should not be overlooked. So you have to know the basics. Obviously, you have to know the core things to do, but the best thing, like the most impactful thing, especially if you're targeting the bigger fish and the migrational fish, is you need to know like when every season's different. So like when they start, you need to have like people in the water saying, hey, the triple tail on the beaches, or hey, the tarpon are starting to show up, because that can make for some of the best catches of the year, just having that human intelligence.
And if you are looking for a reliable, positive, friendly network, then you probably want to join the Insider Fishing Club. It's that's literally the whole mantra of it. And we have had so many people who had said like that is what helped them get to where they are. If you guys don't know about the Insider Club, it's our private club we created, I guess, 3.5, 4 years ago now. And I think we're approaching like 8,000 members. And it started in Florida. Now it's basically Texas to Virginia. And we're literally showing our spots. Members are showing their spots, and basically new reports are going up. I mean, every 5 minutes. I mean, it's literally like that often. There's new stuff going up constantly. And it's just it's a powerful network to ask questions, to figure out what's working right now, to figure out where the bait is, to figure out like, hey, where are my best chances to go this weekend? I don't know if you guys have all heard the Derek Engel podcast interview that we recently did, but Derek is, I mean, the guy basically has a money tree, meaning he puts money into a fishing tournament and it spits him usually thousands of dollars out. Like he pretty much wins every tournament he enters. It's crazy. And I was asking, like, dude, what's your secret? And he said, it's just two things. It's the pre-trip planning to understand the trend so I can pick out the right spot, and then a network. He literally said those two things. And I didn't have to pay him for it. Like he gets it. I mean, he understands why we built the Insider Club, why we have that community, because it's the power of the network combined with the power of the trends. He's like, that's it. That's all I study. And I feel like most people don't do that. Most anglers who are frustrated, who aren't very consistent, like we were for a decade, and just frustrated. I mean, they're doing the wrong things. They're more focused on what lure color do I need, and do I have the latest power pole, and I need to upgrade my boat, and I need to get new rods and reels. And I've seen a lot of people, like even on Facebook, I'm having trouble catching fish, and they're blaming on the color of their braided line. Like that's the least of the problems, right? If you're in a good area, the color of your braided line is almost irrelevant. I do swear that red has been, I don't know, a curse for some reason, but that's the only thing I can possibly say. But where I'm going with this. Like the color of your braid is the least important thing. The most important is studying the trends, figuring out and starting to predict where the feeding zones will be, finding that 10% zone that has the 90% of the fish, and then having a network, to back you up, to ask questions. That's helpful. And I think we have the largest saltwater fishing Facebook group out there. That ain't a network. That's just a place to kind of boast and do funny memes and fish IDs and the stuff that goes on. It's not that helpful, but our community is. I mean, it's the reason that people are paying to be a part of it. It's incredibly helpful, and people are showing real spots and giving like real on-time demand tips. So that's our little plug to make sure you join the Insider Club. We've got some new pricing as well for a lot of you who have asked for like a lower tier price just to get in and test it out. So that is available for you at saltstrong.com. So what else, Luke? What else on avoiding the skunk?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the planning, and then while you were talking about it, I was thinking about I was trying to think of the last day I was skunked on the boat, and I realizing that my performance got much better as we started that club, because I started probably, I guess, almost 4 years ago now, and I've been going out at least once a week, generally once a week though, but once a week, where I'll go out and I'll do a detailed pre-trip plan. I'll go fish that area. In most cases, areas I've never been to before. So like I really have to like put some thought into the pre-trip plan. And then at the end of it, I will go through what worked and what didn't. And I would record all of it and then show it to the club members. That was part of like seeing like real time, like true case analysis and most recent trend data. So that the members could then use, okay, what worked and what didn't work, and use that in their game plan for their trip this coming up weekend. So all real-time data. But that was one thing, and just interacting with all the members, like that I believe is what has enabled me to have like total confidence to go out to any spot throughout any season and feel totally comfortable and confident that I'm at least going to have some action. And it really, I think that like the pre-trip plan and the post-trip analysis, the fact that I was forced to do it, and I had the pressure to perform, to like actually have something decent to share and keep members happy. I think that's a big reason why I have grown in that capacity to just get some action. And the network obviously is the next level. We're now with the network. Like last year, I fly fish some. I used to fly fish a lot, and I've just been too busy. Haven't been able to fly fish. When I'm out fishing, I have to have some action. And and fly fishing makes it a little bit tougher. But I was going through the new platform that we have where the members can share their own reports. It used to be just Tony and I sharing our personal reports and, blasting it to the club members. And now all the club members can share their own reports. And so there's like 40 a day coming in now. It's pretty awesome. And most everybody leaves like tips and tactics on like what they were doing, like what lures they're using, what types of spots they were fishing, what types of spots were good, what was bad. And I happened across one who was nearby in Tampa, where I was living at the time, and he just mentioned, hey, like I just saw some tarpon in the area. So I was like, oh, perfect. Like I was itching to catch a tarpon, and I was itching to get my fly rod out. So I had the fly rod, went out, found those tarpon, and like the first time in like 2 years that I even took the fly rod out, I landed a tarpon, and it was awesome. And I would not have even had that opportunity. I wouldn't have had that insight had I not just been part of the network and just actively communicating with the members. So yeah, I guess the more I think about it, the more important it is. Like even that tournament, I never really thought much about the network capacity until we were just talking one day, and I was like, man, like, because somebody asked me like when I had the most growth, and I had to think about it was during the tournaments, but I think it really all came down to the network, because all those tournament guys, like we knew the basics, like we knew how to find spots and how to approach and how to catch the fish that are there. But the human intelligence aspect is something that can just make just such a big difference. And that's why I believe that's the core reason why that Insider Club has not only, continued on for 4 years, but it's growing very fast.
Yeah, and why the majority of members keep renewing every year. And we've had so many people, I've seen little testimonials that say, hey, I'm not getting skunked anymore, right? And a few people, I mean, like Dave Audie, I saw just won money in his first tournament. And that was a guy who was getting skunked almost every time. Only had a kayak, I mean, about to give up, and he joined the community, and now I believe he's a lifer. I mean, he's bought literally everything that we have, and is now a lifetime member. So,
and a lot have actually become full-time guides now, or at least the guy in COPS is licensed in guiding too. So it's having a good base of people that are all helping and supporting each other. I mean, it can take somebody from newbie to like literally, of an actual fishing guide. So it is incredibly powerful.
But it all starts with the foundation and avoiding the skunk. So a question, does when you say you haven't been skunked, and Peter Deeks said the same thing. A lot of times Peter, I mean, he'll go catch just a handful of fish in the same spots that most weekend warriors fly by as they're leaving the ramp. And there's so many places that are close, like really good spots right next to ramps, that most people just feel like, hey, I'm in the boat, I've got all this money invested, and I got a hall pass, I'm going to go flying and do some exploring, which is cool. But he's like, so many amazing fish are close. But I think the questions comes up is, all right, is this all about just catching like catfish? Like does catfish count? Like, does that still count as a skunk, or does it have to be?
I don't think catfish should count. That should count as a negative one. So you got to catch it, one plus something else for you to break even or get past break even.
That's pretty funny.
I don't count catfish personally.
Fair enough. But I know jacks, I mean, the jacks are fun, especially you get some in a school of them or big ones. I mean, they just annihilate anything. And black drum, same thing. When you get into those, they're not the most exotic and like well thought of fish, but I mean, jacks and black drum, even ladyfish getting to school. I mean, it's fun, especially if you got kids. They think it's so cool to see the acrobats, and those ladyfish will hit you pretty hard. What else? I mean, we talked about Spanish mackerel, sheep's head. I mean, that's something you don't have to go out very far. And a lot of times a year, you can get sheep's head just right there on a dock or a pier. What else? Any other species specific tips?
Yeah, I mean, the core, as far as the skunk course and the analysis tool that we put together, it's really about isolating the specific spots that have a good chance of catching all sorts of fish. And in my opinion, I grew up bass fishing and was totally I literally fished in Lake Link and Lake Otis, that lake that we lived on, like every day for like the probably 5 years, right? Like as long as it wasn't like raining and terrible weather, I was out there at least a little bit. And so I was totally addicted to bass fishing. But once I got a taste of saltwater and just the variety of fish you can catch, it's just, to me, it was more exciting, because like every bite you get is exciting in itself. But with saltwater, especially, you put yourself in these these we call them the feeding zones, and the ideal feeding zones. If you're in that feeding zone, every bite is not exciting because you have a fish on, but you just don't know not only how big it is. For bass fishing, you just don't know how big it is. If it's a small bass or is a big bass, maybe a mudfish or a big speck. But with saltwater, it could be anything. Like it could be a little like 3-inch pinfish, or it could be a 200-pound tarpon. And for me, like, so my favorite thing, especially when I'm taking friends out who don't fish very often, or people who just do freshwater only, is I like to take them out to these feeding zone spots, and then have them catch all different types of species. So it's not about, this course and this tool doesn't go in like the redfish course dives into redfish, like redfish only. Here's exactly where they will be throughout the seasons. And this is more about the feeding zone, like where the best feeding zones will be to have a bunch of action. And that includes big fish, that includes good fish, and it includes the not so good fish, right? But if you're taking out somebody new, like, they just want to catch something. And especially taking somebody from work, or like a cousin or relative from out of town, like, they just want to catch something. Like, sometimes they're more happy catching 20 ladyfish than they are like 1 20-pound snook, right? Like they just want to have action.
Or hey, just a little black tip shark, that everyone goes home and tells their friends about that.
Yeah, I mean, our cousin, Joe Leone, I remember taking him down to Marco, and we got into all sorts of fish. Like, we got some really nice snook, we got some good pompano. Like, we were catching a bunch of fish, and his favorite day was when we were on the beach and ran into a bunch of black tip sharks, and they were all small. Like, they weren't like big. They were maybe like, I don't know, 12 to 20 inches, but we were sight fishing them, and like, that's what he's still like. Every time I chat with him, he's like, "Man, that shark day, remember that? Like, that was so much fun." And they weren't the best. Like, I don't consider that like the best fish, but it was just a cool experience, right? And that's really what it's all about. Is and then again, taking it back to the feeding zones. If the focus is getting out there and getting some action, the focus should be on the feeding zone. And then when you're in the right type of spot, based on the season, based on the conditions, then you're gonna really maximize the chance of not only catching quantities of fish, but good quality fish as well.
Cool. All right, I'm gonna read some questions here. Let me see if I can move this sucker over. So I mentioned earlier that we sent out. That's not going to let me move over the screen. So we sent out an email to like 60,000 inshore anglers and just asked them, like, hey, what's your number one challenge? And this is really how we built the course. And these were some of the, I believe it's like 10 or 11 questions that just kind of came up over and over again in different wording, but for the most part, they're kind of the same. So I'm going to read them to you and just see if this resonates at all with you. Then I encourage you to take the Skunk Factor tool. Is completely free right now, so take it. It costs you nothing, and then after that, you can decide if the course is for you or not. But here are the questions that we got and that we answered inside of the course. So, number one, how can I locate feeding inshore fish in new spots fast? How to fish the tides at the ideal times? What are the best spots to fish right after a nasty front? How can I catch an inshore slam on really windy days? How can I get my kids on lots of fish fast so they don't lose interest in fishing? How can I eliminate the need for live bait? What is the best way to read a new body of water? What is the best tide, water depth, temperature, and moon phase to catch redfish and trout? Why do certain fish hang out in certain areas during certain times of the day? Advanced tips on reading the tides, what bait to use and how to present that bait. How can I consistently catch inshore fish even if I don't have a nice boat? How can I consistently catch inshore fish all year long regardless of the temperature? And a handful of other ones. So those are questions that, I mean, I know I struggle with, and I still have them at times where I have to ask guys like you who are out in the water a whole lot more than I do. So if any of those resonate with you at all, then I encourage you to take this Skunk Factor survey. It's pretty easy. It takes like 60 seconds. answer a handful of questions, and it spits you out a customized video with your answer. It's pretty cool. And they're funny names too, like Bad Spot Barry or Lure Lover Larry. Kind of did some funny names with them.
Yeah, Spooky Sam. Yeah, there's a lot of them, but into that point, yeah, the skunk factor tool is cool. I mean, you'll solve like a portion of it. It'll help you solve a portion, but like if this stuff is resonating, I would say just sign up for the course, because it literally covers everything. You don't have to go through, you don't have to watch that one video. It's more of like a high level. The course has everything, very structured, super targeted, no fluff, and it will take, I don't know, no more than like 2 hours total to go through. You can do it at the convenience of your own time. It's all like, I think the longest video, the video is probably average like 3 to 5 minutes. So you learn all the important topics really fast. And best of all, there's a total 100% money back guarantee, where you have an entire year to make sure you love it. And you have access to it for life, by the way. But you have an entire year to make sure you love it. Make sure that the tips and strategies that you learn actually do work. Most importantly, so you have plenty of time to know and to just make sure that you believe it was well worth the price paid. We call it the 100% thrilled guarantee. If you're not 100% thrilled in any way, let us know. We'll give you a full refund, no questions asked. That's the best way to make the most of your time, is just to go ahead and go straight to the course.
Yep, and that can be found at saltstrong.com. You'll see a tab at the top, courses. Otherwise, if you want to go through the Skunk Factor, which I think you should because it's free, I think we're going to have the link saltstrong.com/skunk. Just saltstrong.com, little slash there, and then the word skunk should take you right there. Otherwise, we'll make sure to put a link in the show notes so you can get direct access to it. So that's it. We'll have a whole lot more on this, a lot more really cool courses coming out. And, of course, a lot of tips that we're putting out there on YouTube. But to get all of our best stuff, all the advanced tips and the real time, like what's working right now to get the power of that network, definitely join us in the Insider Club. We've made that a no-brainer. We put some really low-price monthly options. It used to be annual for the first 2 years, and I think that scared some people away. So now we have really low monthly. Like basically, if you can afford a cup of coffee a month, not a day, a month, then, yeah, you can afford to get in this club now. So that is it. Luke, dude, thanks for the time. Can't wait to see all the fish down there in Bokeelia. I'm going to have to head down here or head down your way pretty soon. Check it out.
Yeah, I'll be getting out as much as I can and scouting this area out. I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, thanks everybody for your time. And yeah, again, that the club too, a lot of people now are starting at the monthly, and then once they actually get in, and you can upgrade any time, or you can go up to annual and save the money. So start monthly, go annual, and we'll make sure that that we adjust all the details and the behind the scene details properly.
Yep. Once again, you can see all that at saltstrong.com, and we'll put the Skunk Factor at saltstrong.com/skunk. That's it. We be out. You guys have a great day.
See ya.
Peace.